Obsession is a 2025 American horror film written and directed by Curry Barker and stars Michael Johnston, Inde Navarrette, Cooper Tomlinson, and Megan Lawless. The plot follows a young dude hopelessly infatuated and friend-zoned by a coworker, but all that changes when he's allowed to make a wish, and he wishes for her to love him more than anyone. So May has been one of the months that I'd really been waiting for, with heavy hitters like Hokum coming out, Backrooms, and of course, Obsession. I've actually been really nervous to review this fucking movie. I liked it a lot, and I even saw it 3 times in the theater, and I think I was just a little intimidated by the absolute crazy responses it's been getting. A lot of people calling it a masterpiece, and I don't really think I'm there just yet, but I have a ton of good things to say about it, though. I think I'll begin by talking about Curry Barker a little bit, because even though I haven't seen his previous projects yet, I know an up-and-comer when I see one, and that's exactly what he is. He's got like 9 shorts that I've heard are very good from around like 2019 to 2024, so 5-year period. And also in 2024, he wrote and directed his debut feature-length, Milk and Cereal, which definitely made waves, and it was on my radar, maybe not right when it came out, but within like 6 months or whatever, and I should have watched it by now, but yeah, now that I've seen Obsession, I definitely, I have the motivation to actually finally watch it. So, yeah, look forward to maybe a Milk and Cereal review coming in the next couple weeks. So anyways, Bear, played by Michael Johnston, has, like I said, he's been infatuated with a coworker, Nikki, played by Inde Navarrette, for a while now. So, Bear's a good dude, it looks like, and I think we've all been in his position, because he's, like I said, he's been completely friend-zoned by Nikki. And that sucks when, that's something that you didn't want. And whether you're a man or a woman, it sucks. So, and pretty much right away, in the very first scene, I was already into these characters. And not because they're necessarily amazing characters or, written by a thespian or whatever, but Curry Barker writes characters like they're normal people. And which is something that I always look for in movies, and I'm just like 9 times out of 10 disappointed. And this movie just feels very human. It doesn't feel like a script that was butchered and rewritten by someone else and then rewritten by 5 people, or just written by someone someone looking to cash an easy check. You just buy every bit of chemistry between literally all 4 of these main characters, not just the 2 leads. And it was just a breath of fresh air for me. So yeah, in addition to Barry and Nikki, you also have Ian and Sarah, and they all, work together at a music shop, which is cool, not a typical, film location. Ian is kind of the comedy relief guy, I guess you could say, especially compared to Bear's, more quiet, reserved kind of personality. And Sarah secretly has a thing for Bear. So one night Bear is out getting a gift for Nikki, and he's at one of those stores that sells, crystals and stuff like that. If you want to be derogatory, a hippie store. So he sees something that catches his eye, a little box called a One Wish Willow. And this is where I start to consider this movie kind of like a dark fairy tale, because I don't know how else to look at it. Because it's supposed to grant you one wish, like a genie, I guess. It's not a genie. It's not like a deity or an apparition or anything like that. It's literally just a little piece of wood inside the box. And looking at it that way just makes the most sense to me, because, it just kind of has all of the pieces of a fairy tale. So, and I felt that way about Hokum. So I guess you could kind of almost not lump it in, but, the 2 kind of fairy tale-esque movies, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys are getting those vibes from either movie. But anyways, luckily this is my review, so I can say, crazy things. Yeah, so you have back to the One Wish Willow, you have a weird, mysterious object with some kind of magical or supernatural powers that probably shouldn't be messed with, and with dire consequences, of course. A person desperate enough to mess with it, and a general, moral of the story. All this just comes across as very fairy tale to me, and I love it. I think it's really cool. I didn't expect it at all, so it was kind of a nice surprise. And for a movie called Obsession, I have been kind of obsessed with certain aspects of this movie, so much that, like I said, I had to watch it 3 times to really, there was just certain things I needed to fully grasp. And that obsession begins with the plot device itself, the One Wish Willow. And I don't know why. It might be my stupid brain, just needing everything to have a clear explanation, which you don't get with this thing, which is obviously how it should be. An explanation, I just would be ridiculous, I think. So I kind of have an issue with where Bear gets it. It's like a mall store or something like that. I felt like, why would something so mysterious and powerful be there? But I'm also going to probably contradict myself a lot in this review, and then I'm going to say, well, why wouldn't it be there? Like, where would it be? Where should it have been? Okay, a contradiction. Because this thing is supposed to grant any wish that you want. Remember that. Bear even looks it up online to see if anyone else had one, or if people are talking about it. And some people are saying that it works, like very few, and with most people saying that it didn't. And you briefly even see on his computer screen where one person even mentions the Mandela effect, and wondering why nobody else seems to remember One Wish Willows from the 80s. I thought that was really cool, and it doesn't go into that. You just see it on the screen. So it's like this movie is just full of just I don't want to say like lack of information, but like in little bits of information that don't go anywhere. And I don't mean that I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It drives me insane, but kind of in a good way, I think you could say. So, I mean, if you need to know where the One Wish Willows come from, or who made them, why they made them, or whatever else, again, you're not going to get that here. So, one night when Bear realizes that Nikki is just not into him the way that he's into her, and probably isn't going to be, he uses the One Wish Willow with the wish that she would love him more than anyone else. And this is where things get really complex for a story that actually seems so simple, because the wish works instantly, but maybe not as smoothly as Bear might have been hoping for. Not that he actually thought that it would work. And pretty much right at this moment, this is where this kind of turns into like a psycho girlfriend type movie, which is what I was expecting. And man, is it that, but man, is it also something else. What I didn't expect was how much this movie would make me think. Again, I had to see it 3 times, and maybe just because I'm a dummy, but I did. So Nikki's now completely different than she was before. She's still herself. It's not like she's a different person, but people are noticing the sudden changes in behavior, odd behavior, especially with her and Bear dating completely out of the blue, and Nikki had never had feelings for him like that. And one of the reasons I watched this movie 3 times was to try and figure out Nikki and her process here, especially with the One Wish Willow. I really felt the need to have a full understanding of it, or at least as much as I could pick up on, through the movie. And I really think the smartest part of Curry Barker's writing here, especially in the way that it addresses consent, which is something I absolutely didn't see coming, and it's in here quite a bit. It's almost an underlying theme, consent. So Nikki is now fully obsessed with Bear, even more so than he was, with her before this happened. But it's not real. It's basically like a magical spell, or even like a type of possession. That's kind of almost the way that I look at it. And while Bear initially tries not to take advantage of Nikki in any way, he did ask for this, and he did want this. And, whether he thought the wish would work or not, he still wished that she would love him unorganically. So while the writing, is on the wall, as Curry Barker has said himself, the script does a great job at making us wonder, who the real villain is here. And if you picked it up on the first watch, then you're probably smarter than I am, but that's fine. But so now back to what I was talking about with the hype that is following this movie, which is almost overwhelming just by itself. I don't think I've seen hype this strong in at least 3-4 years, for a horror movie especially, and I'm not sure I completely agree with it. I've said a number of very positive things, so I'll get into the stuff that I kind of struggled with. On my first watch, I kind of struggled with the One Wish Willow itself. Like I said, I had issues with Bear finding it at such a regular store. I also didn't like how the cashier seemed weird when Bear was asking questions about it. And when he goes back later to the same store, to buy another one, and it's a different employee working, that person said something, kind of semi-weird as well. And as much as I obsessed about it, and as much as I looked for it, I really don't think there is any kind of solid explanation regarding, the One Wish Willow or why people act the way they do under its control. My thought is Curry Barker has either something written, or at least it's in his head, of the One Wish Willow and everything that it has done. But I just don't think he's telling us. And I could be wrong. Maybe he just left things ambiguous. Maybe he doesn't even truly have an explanation for everything. But I have a feeling that he probably does. And maybe he'll reveal that to us someday, because I know he's actually already saying that he wants to make a series, an Obsession series. Or I think it's going to be like basically a One Wish Willow series, and I think that's a good idea. That could make for a great anthology. Just think about it. In the 80s, that would have killed. So another area with this movie that's getting a ton of praise and attention is the performances of the two leads, especially Inde Navarrette. And I should have looked up the pronunciation of her name now that I've said it like 3 times and probably wrong, but yeah, I think they're both really good. I really do. I thought that Michael Johnston's performance had some cracks here and there, especially during his more emotional moments. But I give him credit for playing a character that is much more complex than you first think. Inde, I'd say she gave us a performance that seems to resonate with a lot of people, and she's about to blow up. And I think we have our next Mia Goth or Jenna Ortega or Lauren Rivera. Or someone like that. And I've seen people compare her performance to Toni Collette from Hereditary, which I don't think I'd go quite that far, but I liked her more every time I watched this movie. So that's kind of saying a lot, I think. And the only other thing I would want is just a little bit more in the scare department. I mean, there's a definite creep factor here. Curry Barker almost, in a Damien McCarthy-esque way, has his own jump scare style, which is rad. It's not overused or anything. The creepy scenes are creepy, man. I just wish there was, a little bit more of it, but that's honestly a pretty small complaint, because this movie is really, really good. So I'm giving Obsession 3.5 out of 4 stars. I initially was going to go 3, but after that, and that was maybe on my first or second watch. So on the third watch, yeah, it's getting the 3.5. It's really good. Just took me a few watches to truly appreciate, and I don't think I'm using the word masterpiece just yet, but maybe someday I will. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.
Subscribe right now, please.